Hey, noble ones, welcome to Metatron's Academy. Alright, Mr. Edinger, let's see what we've got. How one British word ruined my American accent. Can you hear the difference? Ooh, that's a challenge, Evan. I'm gonna check it immediately.
This is a clip from my most viewed video I uploaded last year, nearly of all time as well. Try to see if you can hear what exactly is going on with my accent.
Right.
As well as one of the listening only sections that focuses more on listening comprehension. The
way he said more and the O in focus.
Did you catch that? Because I didn't really. To me, that just sounds normal, like that's my voice. But I got this one comment on the video with hundreds of likes on it that said, I have nothing productive to add except that the 2 seconds of British accent around 403 really tickled my brain. I got really excited when I got this comment, like, oh, did I randomly put on a British accent? How did I not catch that in the edit? That's fun. But then I listened to it. Focuses more on listening. Let's play that again. Focuses more on listening. I guess if I'm trying to hyper-analyze my accent, maybe the R was a bit soft, like more, but to my ears, I don't really hear it. But hundreds of people thumb.
Yeah, because I think when we talk about an accent, there is, of course, a component that has to do with how you pronounce each single sound, whether the R is, whether it's a rhotic accent, non-rhotic accent, the way you pronounce your vowels and all of that. But there is also rhythm, there is pitch, there is pace, there is intonation. There is a lot that creates an accent. So even if, perhaps in this case, if I had to hyperanalyze it, I would say that, yeah, sure, the R wasn't the usual R you would expect with a, I want to say, general American accent, and maybe the O was slightly different to what you would expect, but I would still not call it an actual British accent, even if we are only talking about a few seconds. But regardless.
People thumbed up this comment, so there must be something there, unless I'm just a moron. My name is Evan Edinger, and after living in the UK for over 12 years, my accent is all sorts of broken, and nothing exemplifies this better than one simple word. How do you pronounce this word?
Mobile.
Yeah, it's almost a trick question. It depends on the context. Because I've lived in both the US and the UK, I've somehow managed to get myself into a position where I'm wrong on both sides of the pond.
Right.
Let me explain. In the US, you would call this a cell phone. This is because it is a phone that connects through cell towers.
Do people even use, I mean, that's really cool that he's telling us where cell comes from, the cell towers. I thought that was really cool. I never heard the expression cell tower when I was in England, but I don't know, maybe that's how they called them here in the US. However, I would argue that those are just phones now. No one really uses it. Do people ever even call it cell phone or mobile anymore?
These days, though, the term cell phone does feel a bit dated as iPhone, smartphone, or just...
Okay, I'm sorry, Evan. I need to just let him speak, okay? Because he's right. He just said it. So I don't need to Right, fantastic. We agree. Sorry about that.
Phone feels like a better default. But every time I visit the States, I still hear the term cell phone pop up every once in a while. In the UK, they're not called cell phones, which makes sense because they also don't connect to cell towers either. I actually found that out for this video. They're called phone masts here.
Phone masts. Wow, that's news to me as well.
Brilliant, like a ship. They're called mobile phones because, well, they're phones you can use while mobile. But I know there's already some very angry Brits in my comment section, quick to point out, correctly so, that they're not called mobile phones. They're called mobile phones. Mobile phone. It's your mobile number, it's your mobile phone. I know. This is how I managed to be wrong in both countries. So after living here for so long,
that's funny.
There are certain words, for better or worse, that have forced their way into my vernacular. But while the words have come across, the pronunciation has not. So after
that's fascinating. That is fascinating.
Hearing the word mobile so many times over here, my brain started defaulting to using mobile phone over cell phone. But because I've kept the American pronunciation, which sounds better in my natural way of speech, it now just sounds wrong. If I visit the States and slip up and say, oh, what's your mobile? Well, I now come off incredibly foreign. The word mobile for a cell phone is very much not used in the US by any popular metric. And over here, well, that's so off from how it's actually pronounced that, again, it just sounds wrong. We're gonna be putting a pin in that word for later, as I'm not done with it quite yet. There is another weird pronunciation I want to talk about later, but one of the British words I use more than any other is quid. And I've got...
Oh yeah, for sure, like as an alternative for pounds. How much is it? 15 quid? Sure.
More than enough comments over the years, both on YouTube and in person, that the word quid in an American accent just feels wrong. I guess I get it, but that's just how I speak. And quid is a great word.
Poor guy.
So like, that's just how I'm gonna say it. Imagine if every British word I added to my vocabulary, I pronounced closer to the way they do it here. That would be weirder, right? Hello, sir, can I please borrow 5 quid? Closer to the way they do it here. That would be weirder, right? Hello, sir, can I please borrow 5 quid? I ran out of data on my mobile. Now it's titanium, not aluminium. This is difficult.
Oh gosh, yeah, he has an excellent point. I think that would be a bit problematic. It kind of connects to a different situation. We can extend this when it comes to the pronunciation of foreign words. Like, should you keep it? Should you pronounce it in the way it's pronounced in that language when you're using them as you speak English? Or is that going to be a problem? I'll get back to this because I think it would be very interesting as an extension to this point, which is an excellent point.
Switching between the accents like that really does my head in. But I honestly don't mind it that much, as my accent, the way I speak, and the words that I use are representative of my entire life so far. I got a few comments from Canadians on my video last month on nutrition labels in the US and the UK, surprised that I call Kraft mac and cheese Kraft dinner, as they thought, what, only Canadians call it that? Well, I think you'd be right, but I'd learned that that's what Canadians called it like over a decade ago, and then I started calling it Kraft dinner too, because I thought the name sounded much better. I think it's fun. I do that with a lot of words, even ones that aren't in English. I love the way the German word schade sounds so much that I use it regularly even in English conversation. Partner drops her ice cream, schade. Friend can't make it to my party, schade. It sounds better than shame or what a pity, so I use that even if I'm not even pronouncing it the right way at the right time. When I first moved to the UK, one thing
When it comes to that in Italian, I would say che peccato. Che peccato. That's how we say it. Che peccato. It means what a sin, although etymologically it's connected to what a pity.
Found odd was that some friends of mine would put on a completely different voice when they made YouTube videos. The UK as a culture places a lot of stock on how you pronounce things because the people here intrinsically link how you sound to your social class. The tiniest, minute differences in how you pronounce things can get you relentlessly bullied in school for sounding either too posh, upper class, or even too chavvy, too lower class, or just different. There's always some sort of inherent judgment being made, and it's not something I really want to be a part of necessarily. But by having a completely foreign accent, I managed to avoid this judgment for the most part.
You know, that's an interesting point because in my experience in the UK, it's true that the Brits are fixated with accents. They will talk about accents. It will become a topic of conversation, but not as a negative judgment, at least not in my personal experience. It was just chit-chat. Like, a lot of the times people will focus on how I pronounced things or the accent of my colleague, and then we'll speak about it, and then they'll say, oh, when you say this word, you sound English. When you say this word, you sound Australian. When you say this word, you sound Italian. When you say this... But it was just fun. Like, I never experienced, not any of my, like, I had an Asian colleague, I had a couple of American colleagues, I had an Eastern European colleague, and this conversation happened a lot. Talking, it's either the weather or accents, to be honest, when it comes to chit chat. But then again, never felt like it was negative. I'm not saying that what he's now sharing is invalid. I'm just saying it's important to keep in mind that I don't want this to be sort of portrayed in a way that it really isn't. But then again, I don't know. I didn't go to school in the UK, so maybe kids do get bullied. I just think it's kind of depends. It's kind of a case by case, isn't it?
With Brits probably defaulting after hearing my voice to just thinking, he's just some bloody Yank, which, yeah, fair enough. But back to the story of my friend who made videos. She felt embarrassed by her Essex accent as it placed her in a category. She experienced judgment because of her accent. So when she made videos, she tried to present herself as more of a BBC sounding voice, a more standard British television presenter voice. So that way she was elevated, I suppose. And I have another friend who tried changing her chavvy accent to a more posh one around the age of 18. And I know many similar stories to this. I'm sure that most Brits in my audience can relate to this in some way. But one of the reasons that I love London so much is that it is such an international city. Like where I'm from, it's a big mixture of people from all over the place. So sounding different is actually quite difficult. Different to what?
Well, to be honest, different to the local English population. But then again, even then, so we don't need to now try and put on we know exactly what you mean. Even within London, there are loads of different accents. You can sound Cockney, you can sound actual Cockney, you can have an estuary accent, kind of middle class, you can have a posh accent, you can sound like you're from Northeast London. I mean, almost, I mean, London itself has so many different accents. Then your point is still valid up to a certain extent, but it's just, just because there are a lot of Italians living in London, it doesn't mean that now if you say, well, you don't sound like you're from here, then you could say, what do you mean? Because there are a lot of Italians living here. Yeah, okay, it's like a Londoner. We
all sound pretty different. Where I grew up in the States, yes, we had our own regional twang, and you can definitely hear it come out stronger in certain words I say, like coffee or dog or dawn, and especially
if he says coffee, it must be from the Northeast.
In the videos that I've uploaded from New Jersey.
No, I've seen the scramble.
No, the mustn't bust.
Yeah, I'd never seen that. I was very surprised myself. I think it's actually a new event to the Sound County Fair. After I moved out, they were like, why don't we have rodeo for children? Put kids on a sheep.
You see, I'm going to sound way more American and way more Jersey here when I'm in the thick of it. That's just how my brain works. My accent shifts a bit depending on who I'm with, and I'm sure that's similar for you. Having lived in the UK for only 3 years, I had a friend in California bully me saying I was putting on a little accent to pretend I was more British than I really was, and I found that such a weird comment because from my perspective, I was just speaking normally. I'd also had comments on my YouTube videos saying, stop putting on that awful attempt at a British accent, which just felt so strange because
yeah, where? I mean, I don't hear it.
For the most part, I'm not. That's my accent. It's all over the place and all sorts of broken. Yes, I also got comments on my video with Lawrence saying neither of our accents have changed at all, which is bizarre. So I have people saying, you sound like you're putting on a weird British accent. And then I have others saying, you sound the same. And obviously when I put on more stronger enunciated voices like that, I do default to some strange carnal New Jersey accent. I don't know where it comes from. I feel like my internal dialogue is very much the same as I sound here, but stop me if this is something that you've also experienced. I remember when I had never left the country of the USA before, I remember watching lots of YouTube videos. And at the time, there was like 2 or 3 British YouTubers that were really, really popular. And I watched their videos like all the time. I found them amazing. And because I was watching so many British YouTubers all of a sudden, I started dreaming in a weird British accent, what my brain thought of as a British accent, which was pretty much just these 2 or 3 different YouTubers. And then sometimes I had thoughts which came in a British accent. And that's so strange because I don't have that now. I think it was just an overexposure in a short amount of time of this specific type of accent when I was like, I don't know, 18 or so. And my brain was like, is that how we're gonna sound now?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, for me, since he did say to stop, so I'll stop him. For me, this happened, but with foreign languages. So yeah, when I was living in Japan, after a while, I started dreaming in Japanese. And then my inner dialogue and my inner thoughts were happening in Japanese as it was just convenient. It was like resource efficient, like energy-wise. It was just easier because I had to speak Japanese the whole time, so I might as well think in Japanese so I don't have to translate, and that's less effort. And when I was studying for an exam for Mandarin, I did dream a couple of times in Mandarin. So yeah, that does happen. Absolutely. I do relate to that. When it comes to what I was talking about, should you use the actual pronunciation? No, I think it's better in his case if he used the switched to a British accent in the midst of an American accent. Every time he uses a word, it would be weird and unnatural. So I think it's the way he's doing it is the best one. Just use the words you want, but keep them natural in the way you speak. Likewise, when we use words from a different language, I think it depends. If it's a moment for teaching, if it's a teaching opportunity, then I usually try to use at least once the correct pronunciation. So if I'm recording a video and I'm using a lot of terms from Japanese because I'm talking about Japanese warfare, for instance, maybe once I will pronounce the term the way the Japanese do because I am trained in Japanese. So I could say, I don't know, samurai with the correct pitch, yari, katana, whatever the heck, or katana if you want. I mean, for that one, you've got 2 possibilities. But then I would switch to a default anglicized pronunciation. Every other time I do use that term, I would just say, so the samurai in Japanese history, and when the samurai had the yari, what they did, then I would switch it because it just sounds better and it flows better. And also, if I had to imagine, even with the pitch or the tones in Mandarin, like if I had to say, so last night I decided I want to go to Beijing because last time I went to Shanghai, I didn't really have a great time, so that's why it would be so strange. Or like, let's talk about the Ming Chao, and the Ming Chao is a very interesting dynasty because the Ming is it just doesn't work. But maybe do it once. Maybe do it once if you think it's a good opportunity. Also, because if you don't, then you will get all the comments that say, you say you know Japanese, or you say you studied Mandarin and you don't even know how to pronounce. So you can avoid that, pronounce it once, and then switch to default in an anglicized version. The only case in which I don't do it is with Italian words, but that's because it's my native tongue. So to me, it's just so wrong to say bruschetta. I just can't say it. It's bruschetta, and it will always be bruschetta, even if I use it 15 times in a sentence, because that's the natural way of saying it for me. That's the only exception.
Currently, I feel like my internal dialogue is very much the same as how I sound now, American, but with a hint of British inflection on certain words that also are mostly used in England. You know, and I do find it interesting that as much as I've talked about how the British friends of mine were putting on different accents as a way to affect people's perception of themselves, I realize I sort of do that too, just badly, as my London accent is just mine, aka weird, and lasts all of 5 seconds before the American side of my brain kicks in to take back control. Throw the tea in the harbor. That was not a bad pun. In fact, I do have another really interesting clip to show you. When I was filming in Chiswick the other day for my video on Berlin and London's public transport, I'll link that above, I got interrupted while I was filming a particularly bad take. Listen how quickly I switched to what my brain perceives as my standard London accent to blend in a bit, before giving up on that completely. And then eventually the government finally gives in, pays the people what they deserve, and then the process repeats the next week, next year. Oh, hi.
And ask what you're doing.
I'm just filming a video. Just a video about the London Underground. It's weird watching that clip back because it's like not something that I'm trying to do, but my brain automatically triggers that sometimes when I'm being interacted with by someone that I perceive like, oh, am I gonna be in trouble? When I first moved here, I would put on the most American version of my accent possible, so that way I would get people feeling, I guess, a bit more bad for me, like, oh, he's just American, he doesn't know, like, oh, I'm sorry, officer, I didn't know that. Whereas now, I try and blend in a bit more, but by trying to do so without actually trying, it comes off as even more strange.
Yeah, I think it might backfire. Because if you don't know how to do it, meaning if you're not extremely talented when it comes to your ear, or if you're not, I don't know, a voice actor actually trained, then people might think they're trying to mock them. Yeah, like in fact, when someone who's not a Cockney tries to put on a Cockney accent, they call it a Mockney accent. So I think it would be better to just be yourself and be natural. I mean, that's just what I would think.
What makes that clip even weirder is these people had clearly been listening to me speak normally for like quite a bit to the camera. And then when I turn to them, I'm like, oh, I'm just filming a video. Yeah, okay. I do have certain trigger words that cause me to stumble into my London accent, but these are usually just on public transport or like at a retail shop or something. Like, excuse me, can you please move down the carriage? Think of my weird accent as like a Venn diagram, and I'm in this like middle area, but I also consider this weird London-y, accent-y type thing also my accent, as well as my ridiculously extra Jersey accent, and then somewhere in the middle
At this point, whenever he has put on an English accent, when he's like, oh, this would be my London accent, it doesn't sound London specifically. It kind of sounds general Southern, or maybe even what you would call like a standard upper class English accent. To sound like a Londoner, there are some specific characteristics that make you sound exactly like a Londoner. I don't really hear that, but I'm not a native English speaker, so you tell me if you are.
There's this hodgepodge in which I exist. But let's say you're like, oh yeah, that London accent you're doing is really bad. Sounds like nothing I've ever heard. Well, at least let's compare it to a random clip from 2014 of me putting on a British accent. And let's see if you can hear any difference.
Sam and I are now going to touch the water at the beach.
And look, we got a seagull friend.
I'm sorry. It's still raining quite bad. Also, we decided to be Harry and Hermione and Ron Weasley
bloody
again.
hell, Ron.
Sorry.
Do it, talk.
I'm sorry, Harry. Oh, God. Forgot your name.
I'd hope you'd say, I've come a long way. That was really bad though. Like, I'm at the point in my British citizenship where that was painful to listen to. Horrifyingly, physically cringing. And I don't think it's just because it's me, it's because whatever that was so bad. I would love to at some point make a video with someone like an accent coach or something where they're better able to analyze how my accent has changed over time with a lot of experience. So if you know someone who'd want to do that, feel free to link us up. It would be interesting to find out just how all sorts of wrong my accent really is. Actually, on the topic of being wrong, I do make mistakes in these videos, by the way, like all the time. I'm sure you've noticed. I am a human at the end of the day. They do happen, and I'm always looking at them in the comments, and I try and heart the comments that
tell me about it.
point out little mistakes I've made and go, Shada. The fun thing about pronunciations is that because of the sheer number of regional pronunciations of words, you can have people arguing in my comment section that they've never heard of pronunciation I talk about, so therefore it must be wrong. Sometimes I am. Other times, I'm not. How you pronounce things can get really personal. Like the amount of comments I received from Brits that no one says lieutenant, wild.
Oh, that's not true. I say lieutenant. I'm not a Brit, but I did pick it up from the Brits. I don't say lieutenant, I say lieutenant. And absolutely, there are some English people that do say lieutenant, yeah.
You have others saying, well, it's lieutenant, not lieutenant. And then you have some people from India saying, well, they say lieutenant in India too. So it's kind of like the word mobile. I have people on both sides of the argument that both think I'm wrong for alternate reasons. And at that point, I just got to embrace it. I'm making videos, you publish them, and then there they are. And then when someone goes, hey, what about this? I can go, God damn. You see, when I make these types of videos, they're about pronunciations that I have heard regularly here that differ incredibly from any sort of American pronunciation that I'm used to. This is what I find really interesting. And as I live in London, most of these pronunciations will be standard BBC, London, or Southern English pronunciations.
Right.
It is fascinating, though, that due to YouTube, TikTok, and probably just Hollywood, American media in general being so prolific, a lot of Brits, especially younger ones, are starting to take on certain American words and pronunciations, though that's probably a topic for a future video. But if comments on my last words video are anything to go by, a lot of Brits have adopted a more American pronunciation for a few words. Not that that's a bad thing.
I would like to see an example of that, because what word would the English today, in this day and age, pronounce the American way? I'm really curious. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just curious. I wish he gave us a couple of examples.
I feel like everyone's feeling like they have to protect the way that they say things to keep a culture, blah, blah, blah. I understand it, I really do. But for my personal use case, I like being a hodgepodge of everything.
Yeah, sure,
I like that my accent and my vocabulary tells a story of where I'm from. If your
100%.
vocabulary and your accent tells the story of where you're from, and maybe you lived with an Australian for like 3 or 4 years and you picked up a few things, that's cool, man. Doesn't mean you have
I agree with that. Self-expression.
to like forcibly change the way you speak to go back to the way that your area speaks. Just be yourself, right?
Yeah.
Wow, just be yourself, guys. Believe in yourself. And after all of this, now we're actually back to this word. Yeah, I told you to put a pin on it. Now I'm referring not to your phone, but as the spinning object you place above a baby's crib. This is my final question to you in this hodgepodge of a video that I hope you like. How do you pronounce this word when it refers to what is above a baby's crib? I've spoken to many Brits who say, what do you mean? There's no difference. Whereas where I'm from, we actually pronounce this mobile. And I know I'm not from Mobile, Alabama, which is how it's pronounced. I have been quite nice there. But if it is a spinning baby chandelier, I would call that a mobile. And if you think, oh my God, Evan, that sounds weird, why would you say that? Before you jump into my comments about that, just imagine if you had one of these that spun automatically. Maybe you could call it an automobile. Mobile doesn't sound so weird now, does it? Huh? And maybe not, though. So yeah, my accent is all...
That was pretty good at the end. I liked that. I haven't got a clue how I would call that. What, a baby something? I haven't got a clue. Anyways, that was pretty cool. I liked it. Some of you asked me to watch this, so that's why I reacted to it. And I thought it was really cool. Give him a like. Thank you for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.